Hey Computer, play About Bees podcast.
Hello, everybody. We're back again with another episode of About Bees, Culture, and Curiosity with Ron and
Bidzina Moseshvili.
And Bidzina, did you know that this is episode number 12?
It is.
And that means it's the end of the season.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, seasons last for 12, like a season, spring, summer, fall, winter.
Yep.
That's 13 weeks, and we have 12 episodes.
Oh.
And then we have one episode that we'll bring up, and it will be kind of to bridge between season 1 and season 2. So we'll just be kind of like, hey, we actually survived. We're making it season 2, so that'll be what's coming up in the future. But a lot of other things will be on season 2 also, kind of continuing in the spirit with our About Bees stuff, and that's the way we're going to try to go on. You think that'll work?
It does work. So is that where the show most shows have roughly about 10, 12, 11 episodes, maybe sometimes more extras and whatnot?
That's right.
So that it comes from that.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know. Well, yeah, now it's seasons.
One of my favorite podcasts is called Clear and Vivid with Ellen Alda. Ellen Alda was the star of the TV program called MASH, and he did a lot of other acting and movies and so on. But he does a kind of science-y, interviews people, and I kind of wondered why he had so many seasons. And then I counted it out, and I thought, and then I had to look it up just to verify because it wasn't going to be entirely my own idea, but I wanted to see. And it turns out that 13 weeks, 52 weeks in a year, divide 52 by 4, you have 13. So 13 weeks in a season. And that means 12 episodes plus, in the case of Ellen Alda and several other podcasts, there's a bridge, like here's what's going to happen in season 27 once we get there, which is only like 5 or 6 years away.
Yeah, well, it depending on how fast we do this thing.
Yeah.
Or how
Well, we're gonna try to continue to do it weekly as we have been doing, and I have been trying to take care of the podcast, and you've been doing really well with the video casting part.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, 27 subscribers is more than 0, but that's pretty good for just starting out 1 month ago.
Oh yeah.
And it's random people.
Well, you've only been live for about 3 weeks.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's on YouTube.
That's on YouTube.
And what's the name of the YouTube?
Well, this video will be on YouTube. So,
right.
But it's about
But
bees
if people
culture.
are listening,
Yeah,
then I
that's
want
right.
them to be able to jump
Yeah.
over there. Although I do put a link,
Yeah,
so people can look for the link to go to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, so it's pretty much about bees, culture, and curiosity, just a podcast, the same exact way we have spelled. And once you pop that up into YouTube, you got to put the full thing. We're not that popular yet, but hopefully eventually it'll just be when you put in about bees, will pop up.
Wow, that's gonna be great. It'll be at the top of the rank in someday. That's do we strive for that? Like, that's pretty arrogant, isn't it? We're gonna be the best. No, we're just having fun with this, and whether it goes anywhere or not, I really don't care, and I don't think you care too much. It'd be just nice to get people to know more about the intersection between bees and culture and curiosities.
If you do want to go the competitive route, I can't recall who told this story, but one of the NBA players, either Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, said this story, and the way that they got to the top is by looking at their local basketball rankings and seeing where because they were also on the rankings, they played competitively at the time locally, and they looked at their position on the rank, and they looked at the 2 or 3 guys ahead of him, ahead of them, and what they would do is just focus on getting better at those 3. How can I beat those 3? He didn't care about who was in number 1 position. He only cared about beating those top 3. And eventually, he said that's how he climbed to the top.
Wow.
He just first
Well,
3.
it's an inspiration then. So look out, Michael. Here we come. Right?
That's right.
Right. Now, it's been great fun. We're at episode number 12, and this episode is going to be something kind of sort of like beekeeping by the numbers. And not really by the numbers. We're not telling people to keep bees by the number, and instead, what we're doing is just here's what we did. Bidzina wasn't ready for this. This is kind of popping this on him as a surprise, but I was thinking of something that would link in a lot of different kinds of subjects into sort of a semi-unified kind of a podcast, videocast. And I thought, well, what if we just look at numbers? And for example, number 1. Tell me something about number 1. And when you think of bees, like, what do you think about when it's 1?
Well, I have feelings towards the number 1, but I never thought about their relationship towards bees.
Okay.
Yeah, well, there's the song, I'm number 1, hear me sing. It's a children's song. That's when you said that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing that popped into my head.
I didn't. I don't know that song. I didn't have much of a childhood when it comes to songs.
My younger sister would watch it, and every morning at 7 a.m., I would wake up to this.
Oh.
I'm number 2, hear me roar. Here's number 3. I don't know. I kind of messed up the song, but they went all the way from 1 to 9, and they all had their own unique characters.
Okay.
Number 2 is my favorite.
Number 2 was your favorite.
Yep.
What was that one? What was number 2? What was the thing?
Man, if I should, they were just a number. They were the shape of, they were not any costume, and they just had googly eyes, and they had a personality and a mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think each of them had an instrument they held. Like
Okay.
number 8 was like a painter.
Okay.
Or number 7.
Okay.
Yeah, number 7.
Well, you were talking about children's shows. I saw in the news this morning that a very famous in Calgary actor, performer, who was, what was his name? Buckshot Bill or something like that?
Yeah, there was some wild things going on in downtown.
No.
Oh.
This is not wild. This is not downtown. He's 87 years old. He passed away. And he entertained at least 2 generations of kids in Calgary and around the area on TV with a kid show. Oh. And one of his sidekicks was Benny the Bear. So I think Benny the Bear is now free, so he's like a free agent.
Yeah.
And if he looks at the ratings, maybe he can pick out where he wants to go next.
Man, I how do I not know about this?
Yeah. Just passed away. A wonderful entertainer.
Benny
Number
the Bear,
1 in the world
Buckshot.
of bees. Let's. Did you find him?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy. Oh, he was such a kind guy. So 87 years old. He lived a nice long life, entertained a lot of children, and now he's sleeping.
Maybe I'll include a picture of him.
Would you?
Yeah, I think it should be
Is
fine.
it public domain?
We shouldn't get copyright
I don't
strike
know.
for that.
I don't want to risk any of this. This is, gotta be just play it cool. Number 1. When I see the number 1 and I link it to bees, I always link it to the idea that there is one queen in a colony of bees.
Right.
So would you go with that for number 1?
That's right. Yeah. Yes,
For bees.
that makes sense because each colony has one queen,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's the one that rules them all, as they say.
Yeah,
The
she
one-
doesn't wear a ring,
Yeah.
but she is the one queen in a hive. At least that's what we teach people when we're teaching them to keep bees, that there's going to be one queen in the hive, and she's one of the bigger bees. She's long, and
Yeah.
But that's not always true. Sometimes there's no queen in the hive.
Right. There's a lane worker.
There could be laying workers, and then that would be plural. There's almost never one laying worker.
The lane workers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And actually, what we seem to believe now is that when the queen is active, there's a queen in the hive, we still have. What are we doing here?
It might be in the video. This.
Oh, okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
So it's out of the way of our.
Yeah. It was just when I was.
Okay.
When I was looking at that angle, it was just slightly above.
Okay, just some technical stuff going on here, folks, but it's all under control. We have Bidzina at the ready.
That's right.
So, laying workers in a hive can be there even if there's a queen in the hive.
Really?
Yes. So these are workers that can and sometimes do lay eggs even while the queen is active. But those eggs aren't viable. The bees seem to recognize that, and they would remove them and get rid of those eggs because they have a queen, and they don't need those laying workers. Now, remove the queen entirely, and then, you've got most likely a situation where the laying workers are going to be the only ones laying eggs, and they will be laying lots of them, and the bees won't be removing them.
Now, they won't locate the laying worker. They can't find the laying worker. They can't kick her out. Hey, stop laying these eggs.
Well, there's more than one. They say sometimes one paper I read recently claimed that there could be as many as 10% of all the bees in the hive could be laying workers.
Oh, so it gets infestated. But
it's
they're
a biological condition.
Yeah. Because they're trying to pass on their genetics. So what is this phenomenon, the laying worker? Because the queen is dead, and the drone, from what I understand, has the genetics of the queen.
Yes.
And plus more, something like that, right?
Well,
they have a little bit.
No, they won't have anything that the queen does not have.
Okay. So the drone passes on the genetics. So they kind of have this dying star moment where they just start laying. Like I had my first experience with the laying worker, and it was 3 frames of drone brood.
Yeah.
That I came across, and it was, everywhere, and there was actually a nice pattern. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It was a nice pattern, and I was talking to a beekeeper about this. Actually, the club's president, and he was saying that it's possible that if it was a nice pattern, there was actually a queen in there that was that had run out of sperm, and she was just laying drones, so she could still lay a perfect perfect pattern, but they were all drones because they were not fertilized eggs.
Right. So what happens then, the best we understand, is that, as you described, the queen, her spermatheca has run dry.
Yeah.
But she still does all the physical movements that she would do to release the trap door and inseminate the egg as she lays it. It's just nothing's coming out. So when she lays that egg, she thinks in her brain that, oh, good, I've inseminated that egg. It'll develop into a worker, and if a cell is particularly wide, and she measures the cells really quickly, you can barely see it happen with her feet, her front legs, and she checks the width of the cell. And if it's a wider cell, then she intentionally lays an egg without inseminating it, and it becomes a drone, and it's in a drone cell because it's a bigger cell.
Yeah.
So when you see a nice pattern of drones, it could be that's a drone layer queen. So we call them drone layers. We call worker bees that lay eggs laying workers. So there's a difference between the two.
Yeah.
So the drone layer is a queen bee who could be making a very nice pattern of drones without realizing that they were all going to become drones. She was really intending for those to be developing into workers.
But I don't think it was the case for mine because we introduced. So at the time, I didn't know I had a laying worker, and there was no queen, but there were signs of eggs and whatnot. And bees. So I introduced the queen.
Okay.
They killed her. We introduced second queen. They also killed her. And then finally, we figured out that it was a laying worker. So it's just fascinating that they can actually lay so much. So if it was a laying worker and it did lay 3 frames of drone brood, that was pretty crazy. Yeah,
that's very unusual. It's usually pretty scattered.
It wasn't a full frame, but at the bottom, it was. I have videos. It was bottom. It was a nice pattern, and up top, it was more scattered.
Okay.
And so that's why he said it's possible that there's a queen. And so you were just about to say that it's unusual.
Yeah, it would be very unusual for the laying workers to have constructed a reasonably normal-looking pattern of brood.
Yeah.
They tend to be very shotgunish, with a few here and a few there, and multiple eggs in the cells.
Yes.
So if you looked in, you saw multiple eggs, and it's more likely to be laying workers.
I did. So in the parts where they hadn't capped and it hadn't sprouted and they didn't do a good job. Yeah, there was multiple eggs now that you say, but I don't know. Maybe we just have to do further analysis, and maybe my idea of a good pattern is.
Well, it takes experience, but
Right.
you're into your 3rd or 4th year now of
I like
keeping. So you're getting that background knowledge. You'll be able to look at the comb and immediately say what's what the shape of the queen and the workers is.
Hopefully. We hope
I
that.
think so.
But anytime you see a nice brood pattern, it's just like jewels. That's
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's
like rubies or something. Just
they do look beautiful.
yeah.
So in a honeybee hive, then we would normally have one queen, occasionally no queen, and sometimes multiple laying workers. But we could also have more than one queen in a colony of bees.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know about this one.
Yes. So we like to tell people you'll have one queen in your hive, but probably about one time in 20, there will be 2 queens operating simultaneously in the same hive. Almost always, those queens will be a mother and daughter. So it would have been a situation where they're superseding the older queen by raising a new one. And in supersedure conditions, they're generally not as aggressive towards each other as they are when they're swarming. When they're swarming, let's get the old queen out the door, and then let's look around and kill off any of our rivals, and we're going to be the new queen of the house. But when you have an older queen and some supersedure queens developing, usually one of those will survive and often will work and lay eggs while the old queen is still busy laying eggs. So this does happen. And every now and then, you'll have heard of a beekeeper saying, I looked and I looked and I looked and I found the queen. And then I came back a few days later and there were eggs all over the place again. And I looked and I found another queen. And yes, that does happen like that. Now, another option for 2 queens is to intentionally put 2 queens in the same hive. You've heard of that.
Yes.
So you have a 2-queen colony, and you put like a separation between them. So you have a queen in one brood nest and then some like a double excluder so that the queens can't come into contact and fight with each other even if they accidentally bumped into each other. And then you have another brood chamber with a queen in it. And people have operated colonies like that, and they make well more than twice as much honey. They might make 3.5 times as much honey as a single queen colony because of the efficiency in having that larger population.
It's kind of like a cheat code.
It's kind of like their cheat code, yes, yeah. So I remember when I was a kid and I first moved to Saskatchewan and I ran into a beekeeper who was just middle-aged at the peak of his career. His name was Don Peer, P-E-E-R. So he was up in Nipawin, Saskatchewan, which is in the northeast part of Saskatchewan, quite a ways north of North Dakota. And he was running a fantastic operation. He actually had a PhD in entomology from the University of Wisconsin. He grew up, I think, in Ontario, went to Wisconsin to study in the United States, came back to Saskatchewan to run a honey farm.
Yes.
A lot of people who are researchers and earn a PhD don't jump back into business, and he did. He was one of the ones who did that and ran a very successful honey farm.
And he did this method?
He used 2 queens for a while. And he said, I had colonies making 600-700 pounds of honey.
Wow.
And that's what I said. Yeah. I was, and I'm like, wow, like, why would anybody quit that?
Yeah.
And he goes, Ron, you can't handle them. They're stacked up like 20 boxes high.
Yeah.
They're teetering around like little skyscrapers.
Oh.
You're working from the back of a truck. You have to back your flatbed truck up close to the beehive so that you can stand on something to look into the top or take the top boxes off. He said it just wasn't practical. So then his system for a while was...
What if you didn't go as high?
Oh, what would happen? You would lose a lot of honey.
And then, but you would do your rotation thing. But then that would be a lot of work. It's just the same amount of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not really no way
So,
to go to 600 pounds of honey, 600 pounds of honey.
Yeah. And, could you imagine if you have 1,000 colonies of bees, which would have been about the number he would have run in those days. Today, a larger beekeeper has at least 3,000 for the most part.
Right.
And so in those days, it was about 1,000 colonies of bees. And he puts them maybe 30 in a location. And so he has maybe 15, 20 locations he's got to drive around to. And the bees will make between 20 and 30 pounds a day of honey. So he was also a huge advocate of having lots and lots of comb space, empty space. He once said, if I were king of the world, he said this in front of a beekeepers meeting, if I were king of the world, I would make a law that every beekeeper has to own at least one more super than they already have, per hive. And he believed very strongly that you have to have lots of boxes on the hives. So if you have a 2-queen colony and they are making 30 pounds of honey in a day, then in 5-10 days, you've got 200 or 300 pounds of honey, and you've got to be in there taking that honey off.
Yeah.
And he can't because he's got 20 other locations, 30 other locations to go to. So he went back to single queen. And he used double queens for a very short period in the spring. He was buying 3-pound packages. Usually we use a 2-pound package. But he used 2 queens with a 3-pound package and put half the bees below a screen and the other half above a screen. So he had a 2-story hive when he put his packages in. And that way they shared heat.
Yeah.
And kept...
Sorry, go ahead. He shared heat and kept...
Yeah, and kept each other warm because it's still pretty cool when you put your packages in April in Saskatchewan. It can be pretty cold, lots of snow. And that allowed them. And then he would split them apart once they got developed and established.
He would put this in a super or like a nuke box?
No, he would use 2 deep brood chambers.
Oh.
Yes. So 1 brood chamber with 1.5 pounds of bees, which is about 4,500 bees, and 1 queen, and then some sort of a separation barrier. And then right above it, there would be another full brood chamber with the other 4,500 bees and the other queen.
And the bees they would on their own accord, they were like, hey, I like this queen, or whatever.
No, they would tend to stay with, the size. Yeah.
Wherever you put them
originally. That's right. They would tend to stay with that queen, and then they would develop up to some strength. And about 3 weeks later, he would separate them out and have single-story colonies.
So he would get a queenless package, 3-pound queenless package of bees, and then introduce 2 new queens on his own separately, or these packages came with 2
They
queens?
Came with 2 queens.
That was what he had arranged.
That's what he had arranged.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, number 1. What did we learn? A whole bunch about queens. And there's not always 1 queen in a hive. But for now, 1 is a good number to think about for queens. Then there is, this is 2, the number 2.
Looks like
2?
a 5.
Well, they're 2 dice.
2 dice.
Yeah, 2.
Oh.
2 is in dice. So I don't know, this is just random picture that I grabbed off the internet. It's from some highly regulated source. We're going to get sued over this one.
Well,
no,
we might.
No,
honestly,
no.
we did.
No, this is nothing like that.
BBC is after us.
Yeah,
right?
sure, they should be.
Yeah.
We're competition to them. So no, 2, the number 2. There's something really basic and simple about the number 2 that I wanted to talk about, and this is when people write about bees. I am sick and tired of seeing people write the word honeybee as 1 word. It is 2 words.
Oh, it's 2 words?
Honeybee.
Honeybee.
Yes. According to the Entomological Society of America, it has to be 2 words, and that's what you'll see more and more of. But there are still people who, they want to put a hyphen in between, or they want to capitalize them, but the H and the B. I just read a book the other day, and it's written by kind of an obscure guy in Britain, and his whole book uses the single word honey bee, and often he capitalizes the capital H, capital B, 1 word.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's very, very hard to read. And then when you read something like that, you have to think, well, they haven't gone very deep into the literature to know, because if you read any papers about bees, honeybees, you'll see that they always use consistently 2 words to describe what they're doing. The honeybee flies certain distance. A honeybee this, honeybee that. So that's what it should be.
But what about beehive?
Beehive? Okay,
Yeah.
the way I remember beehive is that beehives, the boxes kind of stick together. So the word sticks together, beehive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
God,
You've got that right.
I've been using that one.
And bee yard, the hives are scattered all over the place, so they're all separate. So bee and yard are two separate words.
Now, is it more appropriate to call it a bee colony or beehive?
My sense on that is that a beehive should refer to the entire construction of the boxes, the frames, the lid, the bottom, and the bees that are in it.
Okay.
And a bee colony, like my colonies are developing really strong, really fast. That doesn't mean that they're out there, hiring carpenter ants to build boxes for them.
Right.
They are, developing a big population. So
So-
then the colony is building up a population, and you as the beekeeper will put more boxes onto the beehive.
Right. So you could call a single brood box a colony, but once you start to put boxes on it, now it's a bee. Well, I don't know. Now it's getting very technical, but could you call a nucleus a colony?
It certainly is a
Yeah,
colony,
and
but
then
it's also a beehive. It
it's
lives
also
in a
the bee- yeah,
beehive, and if you include the equipment there, it is the beehive.
Right.
But if you pull a nuke out of a colony, let's say you take the nuke out of the equipment and put it into another hive that maybe has a failing queen. You're trying to double it up or strengthen it or something.
Yeah.
Then your nuke is that colony part, like it's the bees, the queen,
Right.
and the brood.
So a package would be just a colony. A package
Yeah,
of bees.
good point. That's right. It's not a hive.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't call a package a hive. I got 10 hives arrived. They're all in these little screened-in cages. No, that would be wrong. 10 packages arrived.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put them into the boxes, and then they will become 10 beehives.
Or colonies.
Yeah.
And beehives.
That's
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. It's already a colony.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next stage.
Yeah.
A hive, to become a hive.
Right.
That's
right.
established
Yeah.
itself.
And if everybody used the same terminology, then you would know right away what they're talking about.
Yeah. It's all scattered, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's evolving. People, language changes, and that's fine. It used to be that the honeybee as one word was the more common way, but what happened was they decided, the Entomological Society of America decided that expressions like dragonfly, it can't be written as two words. It has to be one word because it signifies a creature.
Yeah. Flying is a thing of its own.
That's right, and dragon is too. It's
Yeah.
not a dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so dragon has nothing to do with describing that insect.
Right.
So a dragonfly as one word works fine.
Yeah.
And a honey bee is a bee that makes honey. So it's
Yeah.
two words.
Yeah.
Like the first word.
Because there's a bunch of bees. There's not different types of flying.
That's right. That's
There's
right.
only one type of flying. But we have 20,000 different bees.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Or is there different types of flight? Well, no. But
Flies?
you would just say, like you would
Word-
say a bird is flying, airplane is flying.
yes.
Yeah.
That all signifies that it's up in the air on its own
Right.
power. Yeah.
And I've heard the nucleus being referred as either nuke or nuck.
Yeah. I've never said nuck.
Yeah.
Always nuke. And
Yeah.
it's short for nuclei
Right.
or nuclear.
But some people have referred to them as nucks, correct? Or
They probably do. Maybe that's a dialect that, local kind of expression.
yeah.
A couple other expressions that personally I don't like, but people use them as part of their language, and that's, it's actually kind of refreshing when you hear people talk a little bit differently. But I hear, like when I lived in the South United States and worked with beekeepers there, it was common for a lot of the older beekeepers to say they're going to go out and rob their bees. And in Canada, we're just way too polite for that. We don't rob the bees.
Right. Well, yeah.
We remove the honey, we take the honey, we harvest the honey.
Treat them for the
Yeah.
winter.
Yeah. We don't like to acknowledge that we're actually robbing from our little insects.
Well, some people like to think it's robbing because that was a big question that was being brought up at the Stampede Fair, and
the Stampede Fair.
Or the Aggie Days at Stampede booth.
So here in Calgary, we have an annual Stampede, which has over 1 million visitors coming by and looking at all the booths and everything. And the Calgary and District Beekeepers Association, you helped them a lot this year. You were working with them?
Yes, it was a big team effort. Yeah, the whole club came down there, set it up, volunteered.
And you had thousands and thousands of people coming through.
Yes.
And some of them said, "You beekeepers are robbing the bees."
Yeah. Well, it would start out nice, and then eventually would lead to that.
Oh boy!
They're like, "So you guys are robbing bees, pretty much," or something of that snarky nature. But
so how do you answer that? What do you say?
Well, at the time, I didn't really have the answer that we got later, but I would pretty much say that they have way more. Like, we give them 100 pounds. We leave them with 100 pounds for winter, 150 pounds roughly
of honey for winter,
and that's more than enough for them to last in winter. But we were discussing in another episode is that the beehive is kind of an artificial log, right? So the bees in nature, they find a small little hole.
Yes.
And then they fill it up much as they can.
Yeah.
And usually they can fill it up 50 pounds, maybe 100 pounds of honey inside of a little hollow in a tree. And that will be enough, more than enough for them. But what the beehive, the beekeeper, or the Langstroth figured out is you can pretty much make an expandable log. So you start out with a tiny little hollow, and then as they get bigger, you artificially expand it, and then when the season is over, the heat is over, you can just bring it back down to a tiny little hollow. So it's really...
That's a nice way to explain it.
It's kind of like, maybe they should make... they're circular ones, but that would be a headache. Circular
just working with it, dealing with it, that sure would be.
Yeah.
But that's a really good explanation. So when it's expanded in some areas of the world, they will make a lot more honey than they need to survive for the winter.
Yes.
Or for their off season.
Yeah. And it's artificially expanded. Like we're not... Well, I don't even know if that's the right word, because what is artificial? Everything's real. Like... It's a farming way of, it's a mechanized way of beekeeping.
That's like saying the natural color of a Ford 150.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like what?
All the other colors are artificial, but mine's got the natural black color.
Or when people say, "Oh, I have," that's not natural. Like that GMO's not. Well, what do you mean by that? It comes from nature.
Comes from nature,
and we didn't invent it, or it didn't come out of thin air.
Right.
Yeah, it was there, and we just kind of manipulated it into our own.
But then on the other hand, we also recognize that a lot of things that are natural are also extraordinary poisons that could kill us. I mean, it's natural to have an avalanche. It's natural to have arsenic in a well. Like, that could be natural.
True. That's true.
So things can be natural and deadly. And while we're using natural products and extensions of them, such as GMO, we do want a certain amount of caution. I personally think that GMOs have a role to play in feeding the 8 billion people we have on the earth.
From what I understand, the Aztecs made the corn was not the size that it was that we see today.
Right.
It was
so they
smaller.
had these little laboratories that they went down into the ground and dug around with special microscopes and tools, and they jerked out the DNA from an elephant and stuck it into the corn to make it bigger.
They did pretty much they did something of that nature.
Okay.
And then at the end, they would have to do a sacrifice.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
But
that was a long time ago.
That's neither here or there.
No, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But what they did figure out is if you cross...
At least they weren't drowning witches.
That's right. That's what they were doing. Yeah.
So in England.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then so just a little side point. So the point of drowning them was if they float, they're human. Or sorry, if they sink, they would put weights on them. I can't forget the story. I kind of forget it. But if they sink, they're human, which means they're dead, and you can't get them back. But if they float, then they're a witch.
Yeah,
So
it was
that-
kind of hard to win that one, wasn't it?
Well, exactly, right? It's like, well, good luck. Okay, we figured out she's not a witch, and now we have to pray to God that we committed a sin. But anyways, the Aztecs
I
figured...
don't think they regretted what they did. I mean, it was
But-
mostly a situation where there was an older lady living by herself in town that maybe everybody was jealous because she owned a big field and she wouldn't sell it to anybody. So, too bad. She's a witch.
It's funny that witches kind of get a bad rep and wizards get a really good rep. But
Yeah.
they're the same thing. The witch is just a female version of a wizard.
Yeah, people are cruel that way. Yeah.
Or are wizards to females as well?
I don't
Maybe
know. I don't know my wizards. I don't know my wizards from my
from your witches?
from my witches.
Yeah,
No.
Wizards and Witches.
But-
That should be a good show.
Yeah. But here we are, only up to number 2. We've
Yes.
gone through number 1,
Yeah.
which was one queen in a hive, and number 2, which is 2 words when you say honeybee. When you write honeybee, well, when you say it, you're going to say 2 words. But when you write it, please write honey space bee. That's the way it should be. Oh, one more before I move on from this. Another thing that, since I'm old and grumpy, that really bugs me is when I hear people say that, oh, I have a frame of brood and it's all hatching. Look at all these new little bees running around. They all just hatched. They did not just hatch. They emerged. Bees emerge from the cell as adults. They also come out of eggs, which hatch at day 3. I was at a meeting not too long ago where a very intelligent young lady who's a skilled beekeeper kept saying, all my bees are hatching, and it just, it really made me feel like I know it's awful for me to judge people.
Amateur way. Oh, well, but...
Yeah, like it indicated that maybe she was skillful, maybe she was intelligent, and I think she was both. But she lacked that extra little step of learning how to describe what's going on in a hive properly. So that sort of took away from a lot of her other message.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why you want to try your best. I know I mess up a lot, use the wrong words. I did on our very first episode, and
Did you fix it and post edit?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I
you
left
didn't-
it because
didn't re-record?
No, I've got to be honest, and I it was about us being in Treaty 5 instead of Treaty 7. We're in Treaty 7. Anyway, that's the number 2 honey bee. Now we have the number 2 or 3, and this is something that I really don't know enough about to do justice to.
Yeah.
But why would I have the number 2 and the number 3 together on a slide?
Is 2 multiplied by 3 equals 6. And
Okay.
Hexagon has 6 sides.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't even thought of that. You're absolutely right. Maybe we should just move on to the next slide. But I will try to describe why I have 2 or 3. There is a drone, a queen. Okay, let's do it differently. A drone, a queen, and a worker bee walk into a bar. Obviously, the bar was much too low to the ground.
Was the bartender a grasshopper?
No.
Okay.
No. No. So 2 is the number of sexes in a bee colony. But 3 is the number of genders, or sometimes people call it castes.
Yeah.
So, and I really don't know which is correct. I heard, I saw dummies for beekeeping for dummies.
Yeah, Beekeeping for Dummies, yep.
I didn't buy the book. I was in the bookstore and I was just flipping through it, and I saw them, say it one way, and then I pulled out a book from a scientist who says it another way, and I don't know which one is right, really. Scientists could be wrong, but some will say that there are 3 castes, and some will say that there are 2 sexes and 2 castes for one of the sexes. I don't know. I don't know what's the right way, but it's just something to think about, is the fact that in a colony of bees, we have 2 sexes. We have the male bees, which are drones. We have the female bees, which may be either workers or a queen. And that makes 3 different types of physically different bees. And only 3 different types in the honeybee world. People often ask the question, like, well, are there other kinds of bees? You know, which is a kind of a perceptive question, because with the ant world, you know, there can be different kinds of even the same
Right.
gender, the same caste.
Yeah.
Maybe they're different castes because they perform different roles.
And they're different body sizes and whatnot.
Very different, aren't
yeah.
they?
Yeah. It is actually interesting in that regard.
Some ants, do they have wings? Like,
Is it the males that have wings, or
see, I don't know for sure.
So there's a period of when they like, there's some ants when they like swarm, kind of. I don't know what they do, but when they expand, I've seen it. There's these ants coming out with wings everywhere, and I don't know if those are male or females, but it was the wildest things.
Okay,
Yeah.
we have a homework assignment for next time.
Yeah. But in the ant world, they also kind of live a matriarchy as well, correct? They have mostly, it's a
I
female.
think so, yes.
Yeah, it's a the bug society is very, I mean, the black widow, right? Is it the black widow that eats her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She needs the nourishment. I
she needs
think
the
that
nourishment.
praying mantises do the same thing.
They eat their
mate.
their
Mhm.
spouse. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you got to do what you got to do.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's what Grandma did, so that's what I'm going to do.
that's right.
All right, let's move on a little bit. Here's a number that'll make you think. Why do I have the number 26?
26.
You won't get
It's
this.
my Michael Jordan's. Or no, he's 23. But,
Okay.
okay. Enough about Michael Jordan. But no, 26.
Yeah, 26. So,
I don't know.
okay, that's fair enough because it's very obscure. 26, although that picture is a queen in a cage, right? So can you imagine?
Oh, is that what it is? I thought it was pictures on a like some.
Nope, this is a plastic queen cage.
Yeah.
And it has a queen and some attendant workers in with her. If you could imagine 26 of these cages being brought in 1956 from Africa to Brazil by a scientist who wanted to improve the quality of life for the peasants in Brazil. So he had nothing but the highest intentions and regards.
Right.
When Warwick, it's his first name, Kerr, Kerr, Warwick Kerr, brought the first African bees into Brazil. And those 26 queens were kept in isolation until they were accidentally released. Now, his intention, he was a geneticist and an entomologist, and Dr. Kerr's intention was to breed a better queen, a queen that would produce bees that would be able to perform much better in the tropics than the European bees that they were using at the time. So in Brazil, most of the bees came out of Portugal and Spain. They were the Apis iberica.
Yeah.
And that type of bee wasn't well adapted to the tropics. So for the longest time, the only bees in Brazil and a lot of the tropical areas of South America, the only bees there were from Europe, and they were kept mostly by missionaries who needed to have beeswax to do their ceremonies.
They were brought over during the Europe.
During the European settlement, the European invasions. So the bees were brought over for the priests, for the missionaries, so that they could produce wax and use that wax in their religious ceremonies. And it began to be realized that they needed bees for pollination. But the European bee kept dying out. They just wouldn't get strong enough. They were just not very good. So
It's too hot, maybe too
it
humid.
was too hot and too humid, exactly right. So Warwick Kerr went to Africa to get bees that were well adapted to heat and humidity, and he brought them to Brazil.
Yeah.
And there they crossbred by accident. Before he could finish his work, they created what we call the Africanized honeybee, which some people have misnamed the killer bee.
Yeah. And why has it been misnamed the killer bee?
Because it was more aggressive. It, just like the bees in Africa they're
that's
just
right.
more defensive. Yeah.
And they swarm a lot
Mhm.
more. So one hive can swarm 4 or 5 times.
It can,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, if it gets into conditions where they need to, do it for their survival, then they will issue a lot of swarms. But they can also build up very big, strong colonies. And Brazil went from a country that barely produced any honey to one of the largest exporters of honey in the world,
Well,
all within a matter of about 10 or 15 years because of the changeover in the bees. So
and those 26
queens,
were the direct result.
they were
This was the direct result of
That's
them.
right. That's right. Only 26, just 26 queens, and their genetics, their genes spread
Man,
to billions of bees.
it's just, this reminds me of the aliens again.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
I guess they were aliens, but so were the honeybees from Europe.
yeah.
They weren't the native bees. And Dr. Kerr, I got to know his family a little bit, and they have been advocating for people to understand that, for one thing, he had worked all his life to basically try to help the peasants and figure out ways of farming and agriculture that would
Yeah.
be, ways of improving what the people had.
Yeah.
So this rather unfortunate killer bee story came out of it partly because at the time when he was doing his research, Dr. Kerr was also fighting for some liberalization of the military dictatorship that was ruling Brazil.
I see.
And the military dictatorship owned the newspapers.
Mm.
And they
So
so they created the story. They called them assassin bees,
Well,
created by the rabble-rouser Warwick Kerr.
so they were going down destroying apiaries wherever they could because they were probably using this as a source of income or food
That's
to
right.
fight their front.
Right.
Yeah.
The military would do that against the
Yeah.
poor people. And I think they put him in prison for a very short period of time, but he was so well renowned. He was a very famous geneticist around the world.
So is this regarded is this positive that this happened in Brazil because now that they're the largest honey exporter, so is he regarded positively in
He's
South
regarded
America?
very positively, and when he
Okay.
passed away about 3 years ago, the flags across the whole country were flown at half-mast.
Right.
He was that famous and that positively regarded.
Yeah.
In the northern hemisphere, not so much because we think of killer bees,
Right.
and he's responsible for the killer bees.
Well, he kind of not to. It's like the story of like road to hell is paved with good intentions,
Mm-hmm.
but this one isn't really the road to hell. 'Cause-
Not entirely. No.
Yeah.
No. I can understand some people being very upset that we have a creature called killer bees. We also have a creature called varroa mite. We have
Yeah.
a lot of things. We even have creatures called honeybees that didn't exist in North America
Yeah, and
until
that-
the settlers brought them over.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of the similar story of fentanyl.
What about
kind
that?
of very separate from bees, but the creator of fentanyl, I can't recall his name, but he wanted to find a cheaper alternative source to opium,
Mm-hmm.
and that was his intentions of creating fentanyl. But then it was used in the way it is used. But
Yeah.
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 But yeah,
We-
that was.
we don't know
It's yeah. People create. The Nobel Prize, right? This is kind of the Bell Nobel. Sorry, it's recording.
It is.
Yeah, it's in there. It's
Okay.
it's black. I'm like,
Okay.
what's going? I'm like, what happened here? But
Okay.
did I just lose Ron?
Ron is still in the building.
But so
But Elvis is gone.
Yeah,
Okay, tell me about the Nobel Prize.
Bell Nobel, right?
Yes.
So he's the creator of TNT.
Yeah, Alfred Nobel
Alfred-
invented
yeah.
TNT.
Yeah, Alfred
okay.
Nobel. So he created the Nobel Prize because he wanted to be regarded as in a positive light,
Right.
instead of people knowing for this creator of TNT.
You know what? If he hadn't given away the Nobel Prize, we wouldn't even remember who invented TNT, like who invented dynamite.
Right.
We wouldn't know. So it actually backfired by doing such a good thing and giving away his fortune to scientists to help improve things, and also his Nobel Peace Prize, which was to recognize people who were doing something to make the world more peaceful.
Right.
If he hadn't been so generous, we'd have forgotten his name long ago.
Right. He could have just hidden
Yeah.
in the shadows. With
Just disappeared on an
Yeah.
island with all that money.
Yeah, and then instead,
Instead, we know what he did.
because everyone tells the story now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know what he did.
Yeah, we know
Okay.
what you did, Nobel. Well,
What about the number 500? And there's a clue here on the screen.
is there how many worker bees?
No, there's supposed to be drone bees.
Oh,
They're supposed to be fat, plump.
sorry, I'm kind of.
Yeah, no,
Oh
it's,
yes,
it's
you're
hard
right.
for us
Those
to
are,
see the
those are
screen in
drone
this
bees.
room.
So is that generally how many drone bees are inside of a colony?
Generally,
Okay.
yeah, it can range. It can range a lot, but we went from the one queen, and we're looking at 0 drones during about half the year, at least in our part of the world,
Right.
jumping up to at least 500, and probably a lot more. Have you ever seen a frame in your hives that is almost entirely drone brood?
Not
Not
particular.
entirely,
Not
except for that laying worker one.
Except that lane worker one, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not common to fill up a whole frame. Usually they poke them around the edge, but people have been purchasing green frames.
Oh, yes.
Yes, which are wider, so that the queen doesn't lay worker eggs there, but when she tests the size of the cell, she just lays eggs that are not inseminated, and they become drones.
Right. So for the non-beekeepers, I don't know how many of them are listening, but drones
Not
are
a one, not even one.
drones are bigger than worker bees, and the cell the queen lays, the drones are usually bigger, and they're specially made.
Good, great.
From the workers, but beekeepers can buy an artificial frame that's all filled with these drone cells, where the queen will then go and just behave as just like a regular drone cell, and she will lay eggs in there. And the purpose of this is because varroa mite love drones. They're big and fatty. They got all the blood that they can suck. I don't know. They suck on blood, right?
That and fat tissue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Blood, the hemolymph on the adults, and the fat tissue on the immature growing ones that are inside those cells that you're talking about.
Right. So they go inside these cells and they love to hang out there. And if there's a bunch of them, the beekeeper then takes this frame out when the queen has laid all these drones, and then freezes the frame to kill all the varroa mite, to reduce the population of the varroa mite naturally. Is kind of. But what are your thoughts about that?
That's exactly right, and I think it works.
It
If you
works,
keep the
okay.
timing down really well and
Right.
pull them out, because that's where the drones are, where the varroa will go.
Yeah.
Instead of infecting the workers as they're developing, the varroa go into those cells, and then you can kill the varroa.
Yeah, because you're never going to kill all the varroa. It's just reducing the population so they can't exceed the honeybee population. Because naturally, the bees they're aware of the varroa. They're taking care of them, but sometimes it just gets out of hand, right? Is that, or they're not aware of it? Or?
They have a tough time. They probably are aware
Yeah.
of these varroa hanging on their body and sucking their fatty tissue in their hemolymph, but there's not much they can do about it.
They can't clean each other off.
It's dark inside the hive, so they don't see the red color of the varroa mite. And the varroa mite, if it's on the back or the back of a worker bee, it feels just about the same as the thorax of the back of the bee.
Right,
So
they've
they're not
really-
being noticed. And most varroa mites don't hang on the back of an adult bee. They hang on the underside where nobody looks. So it is kind of hard for them to be removed by the bees themselves.
Yeah.
And most of the varroa, say 90% of the varroa population, is living underneath a sealed wax capping,
Yeah.
hiding
They
in
like
the drone
that.
cells or even in the worker cells.
Yeah.
So the number 500 to me was really intriguing because why do we need so many drones?
So I wrote a little bit of like a article about this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I'll just read it off. It's going to be just kind of word for word. So male honeybees, known as drones, have a unique mission to mate and preserve the genetic diversity of the beehive. Drones are vital for health and survival of future honeybee colonies, ensuring their prosperity. This phenomenon is called arohentoki. You know about you? Oh, okay. Yeah. So this phenomenon, it's where an unfertilized egg develops into a male bees. Arohentoki. How do you say it?
I'd have to look at it because I wouldn't get it right either. But arohentoki?
Yeah, something like that. Promotes genetic sharing among sister bees, strengthening their bond. So in scientific terms, female bees are semi-clones of the queen bee. So the female worker bees are semi-clones of the queen bee, while males possess the potential for new beneficial genetic traits. That's why drones are so vital. So there's a potential for a mutation in the drone by them going mating with other colonies. Because they're going to go fly out and mate with other queen bees, and then they share the genetics, and a new mutation can occur. While the female worker bees cannot do that.
Right. They don't mate with anybody.
They don't mate with anybody.
So even if they do have a mutation,
yes,
it dies with them.
It dies with them. And, people always drones get a bad rep in the beekeeping community because they don't do anything, but they're just as important. I feel. Well, there's 500 of them, so they that's how much they need. But that 500 is a very important component of this hive that we
would agree with that. Yes. Yeah. I hadn't thought about the fact, and you're right, that I guess there could be a mutation in a new queen.
Yes.
But that's a much smaller opportunity than the hundreds of drones that are created. And also, the queen will mate with maybe a dozen drones. So the chance of having that mutated gene enter into the system of the bees is a little greater. So if there's going to be any positive mutations, any changes that make bees more effective, live longer, hardier against diseases, it's probably going to have to come from the drone's mutation.
But it has, yeah. That's how else are they're going to spread it? Spread the genetics from one hive to the other. That's kind of their mechanism,
right?
And that's what you just said. So so the drones, out of the 500 in each colony, maybe only 10, 15, hopefully 20, in a good year, will mate.
Yes.
And once they do mate, they're they mate in the air. They have a mating flight, and their ejaculation is so strong when they release their sperm, their entire guts pretty much explode. So talk about a party.
About a party.
And then they fall to the ground, and that's their last flight.
Yeah.
So who do you think has a better end? The drone bees that don't mate and live their life out, eat honey, and just hang out, or the ones that mate and pass on their genetics?
Sometime in the future, we'll talk just about drones, and I have a video that I took last year on the first day of fall, September 21 of 2023, and I just happened to be sitting in front of my beehives when the drones were being expelled.
Whoa, yeah. Right, they get expelled, that's right.
That's an awful sight. The drones were so desperate to get back in the hive. Yeah. They were already hungry and beaten up.
It was cold, kind of?
No, it was a beautiful day.
Okay.
They picked a really nice day to kill their drones off.
Yeah.
And they were dragging them off. They were stinging at them. I don't know if they actually sting into them, but they were, the
they
bees.
could, yeah.
They were ripping them apart. It was ugly.
And they'll pull the larvae out, right?
I don't know that. They probably do.
The drone,
I guess
if
they
something
would.
happens.
Yeah, I guess they would. If you have a frost and the honey flow is over, then I guess that's what they'd be doing.
Yeah, I've heard that they'll just pull it out before it even hatches.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that. So you've explained something to me or made me think about something that I hadn't really considered, and that's the fact that having lots of drones gives more opportunity for strong mutations to come into into existence, because obviously if you have 500 or even 1,000 drones inside of a colony of bees, and if any of those mutations are weak, like bad knees or something wrong, then they're likely not going to mate. But any of the mutations that are good and create a more viable bee, then they have an opportunity to spread that.
Right. If they have more honey in the hive, if the stronger hives are ones that are going to mate.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
And if they're stronger, that means they're doing something right, or I don't know. It could be various factors, but they're probably doing something right. Yeah.
But you're right. That's a really good point. Okay, I've only got a few more slides of numbers. So we're working our way up. We started with number 1. We're up to number 20,000.
Whoa.
So 20,000 is this one because you've talked about it before. It's the estimated number of species of bees.
Yes.
In the world.
Yes. Yeah, that's so. Who would have ever thought this, really?
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there's 20,000 different species of bees. Yeah.
So in my mind, that implies at least 20,000 different specific mini eco environments, because, they're adapted to do different things. Bigger bees in different areas, different kind of flowers, different kind of weather conditions, different, salt concentrate of the soil, just the length of the winter. So all these species have developed due to different situations, different things that created them, changed them. I don't want to say the word created. They changed. They changed from previous bees. You might have settler bees come into an area, and then after, they have a generation at least every year. So after a couple hundred years, you have lots of opportunity for mutations to come in, and those mutations will eventually add up to the point where the bees will no longer mate with each other, but they'll mate within their own mutated group.
So sorry, I was just kind of typing stuff. Do you mind repeating what you just went?
No, you'll have to listen to the podcast later.
But what I was typing here is I asked Gemini, the robot, to come up with list of all the cool and unique bees that exist of the list of 20,000, and the more the unique, the better. And this is the list it gave. So number 1, here we can see some pictures as well.
Okay.
So we got the peacock carpenter bee, or maybe you want to say the scientific name there.
No, I'm not even going to try to read it from here, but it is, it's a Zylocopa. So that's a carpenter bee, and the carpenter bees are big. They're some of the biggest bees of all the bee populations.
Right. So it says here, these large metallic blue bees are native to Australia.
Oh, but we're not done with the carpenter bee. Do you know why the carpenter bees are so big?
No. Are they because they're carpenters?
Yeah, they got to carry a hammer and a saw. Okay, now you're a little blue bee from Australia.
They're solitary bees that excavates nests in wood and creating intricate tunnels.
Yes.
So next we have the orchard bee, Ego something, I don't know. These colorful bees are found in tropical and subtropical regions of the Americas. They are important pollinators of orchards and collect fragrances from flowers to attract females. Oh, males collect fragrances from flowers to attract females.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine that?
That's actually really...
Yeah, humans would never do that.
No.
Unless you talk about a guy taking a shower before he goes out on a date. But other than that, and giving perfume as a gift. I guess that would be another thing we do.
It's like a cuckoo. It's like that cuckoo bird that does that. Oh, no, I don't know if it would. But then we have the leaf cutter bee, and it's the mega chili. So these bees are known for their unique nesting behavior. cutting circular pieces from leaves to line their nests. They're important pollinators of many plants. Then we have the cuckoo bee. This one is my favorite.
Oh, no, I don't like them.
Well, they're called the cuckoo-like bee because they look more like a wasp.
Okay.
So these, I just love the name. Whoever came up with it, cuckoo bee or cuckoo-like bee. These parasitic bees lay their eggs in the nests of other bees, where their larvae consume the host's food supply and often kill the host larvae. They're often...
Now you see why I don't like them.
Yeah, they're pretty weird. I mean...
We have several cuckoo bumblebee species here in Calgary.
Really?
Yes, yeah. And I found one in one of my experiments when I had boxes put out for bumblebees.
Are they...
And they had, it was really weird to look inside this colony, this nest of bumblebees, and see different species of bees in there.
And they're also parasitic?
They're parasitic in the sense that they lay their eggs in somebody else's nest, and somebody else has to feed and take care of them at their own detriment, because the other bees are weakened and can't.
But the cuckoo bumblebee will also do the same?
No, that's what I'm talking about. The cuckoo bumblebee is that one.
But there's a cuckoo bee as well. They're just called cuckoo because they're parasitic? Is that,
yeah. So the cuckoo bumblebee that we had here was called Bombus bohemicus, and it is almost extinct. It's very rare, so we don't want them to die out. They probably have some obscure reason for living.
Right.
But yeah, that's a cuckoo bee.
And then we can kind of keep going on, but then we also have the sweet bee, or sweat bee.
Mm-hmm.
These small, often metallic bees.
Metallic looking. Yeah, so they don't have very many hairs.
Okay. Often metallic-looking bees are attracted to human sweat, which they collect to obtain salts and minerals. They're important pollinators. Okay, we know Gemini. They're important pollinators.
They're all important pollinators for somebody.
And then I guess, this is a really cool one. Teddy bear bee. These large,
that's big.
Yeah. These large furry bees are native to Australia, are known for their gentle nature and their resemblance to teddy bears.
Well, that's pretty cute. Somebody should illegally import them into Canada, because I think they would go over really well with people.
Should we just briefly look at a list of bumblebees in Alberta, maybe? Is that...
No, I think
that was enough.
We're deep enough into the 20,000 species. But you made a really good point in all the variety of these bees.
Yeah.
They're not all honeybees.
No.
I think there are 7 species of honeybees, and those species are I shouldn't say 7 species of honeybees, 7 species of the Apis honeybee. And that includes the Apis mellifera, the Apis cerana. So Apis mellifera is our bee, the one that we tend to keep. And then the Apis cerana is almost the equivalent, just a few differences in their life cycles and their way of and their size and their colony structure. And those ones are in Asia. But then there are also those ones that you showed us a week or two ago that make these huge 5-foot long nests of single combs made out of wax that will hang from a cliff or a tall tree, and that's where they would live. So that's a Apis dorsata. There are other species, but then why I tried to correct myself a little bit on this honeybee story is that we have honeybees in South America and Central America, southern Mexico as well, that are not Apis. They belong to a whole different species.
Right.
And species, plural. So many different species of these stingless bees. And these stingless bees produce enough honey for local people to harvest a small amount of honey from their colonies.
And these stingless bees bite, though, don't they?
They can, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been bitten by them. I've been around them a few times, and they really were very, very quiet around me. They just did not seem aggressive or wanting to bite.
So it is a honeybee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to do an episode because I was in Mexico in January, and then I was in Thailand a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And in both cases, I had the wonderful opportunity to spend some time with the native bees, including stingless bees, stingless honeybees.
Okay. That would be really cool because I am really interested in that.
They're cool. They're really neat. Yeah.
But there's apparently 43 recognized subspecies of honeybees.
Okay, that's the subspecies
Yeah.
of the honeybee,
Honeybee.
being like the Western European honeybee.
Yeah.
So those would include like the German black bee,
Right,
the
probably.
Italian bee,
Yeah.
the Caucasian bee from Georgia,
yeah.
the Corniolan bee from Slovenia.
There's a
Like,
Ukrainian Carpathians. Is that any different?
that probably is a different
Okay.
bee there too.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there are half a dozen subspecies, not species, because all of these can interbreed.
Right.
Half a dozen subspecies in Africa, and it was subspecies that Dr. Kerr brought from Africa to Brazil. And because they're not different species, but they're different races or different subspecies, they were able to mate and create a new strain of bees.
Fitted for Brazil.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So this could be also built into them evolutionary where I don't know if I said that right, but where they when they're brought to a new location, or if they go to a new location, this is their way of kind of dominating the area. 'Cause
Right.
they don't know what they're going to get themselves into.
Well, that's a good point. And the result is a mutation
Yeah.
that allows certain types of honeybee to survive better than others. So we have like the Apis mellifera, can't say it, linguistina, which is the Italian bee, and it's well developed, mutated for Italy, for the subtropics, the country of Italy.
Yeah.
And then we have the Apis mellifera, and that's not my stutter again, it's just
Yeah.
mellifera. That type subspecies evolved to survive in the northern darker climates of areas like Ireland, where it rains a lot and it's cooler, and Germany, northern Germany.
Yeah.
So these different species kind
That's
of
right.
kind of dominate, just like you said, different little ecological niches.
And honeybees are kind of the only invasive species that's kind of protected. Well,
Yeah.
then you have cows and
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
horses.
yeah,
And all
it-
these
it-
kind. Yeah, it's just a farm animal, really.
Mhm.
It has been kind of domesticated and turned into a farm.
It's been used for farmers
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Yep, and
Yeah.
to produce some good food for us.
Right.
My next number, you're going to guess right away what I mean by 45,000.
Is that peak honeybee
Yeah,
population?
maybe. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And this is a really ambiguous number. We don't have a really clear handle on how many bees are in a normal, strong colony of bees in any particular part of the world. I've heard people say 70,000 bees. Oh yeah, we get 70,000 bees in my beehives. Probably not.
Yeah.
That'd be almost impossible. I don't think the queen could lay enough eggs and the bees live long enough and have enough space to raise all of that brood to end up with a population that big. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So in my mind, 45,000 is a good strong colony of bees.
Right.
But I've never actually counted them.
Yeah.
Or the alternative is to weigh them.
Yes.
So what people are suggesting, if you want to know how many bees you have in a colony, is there are roughly a little more than 3,000 bees in a pound. And if you weighed all the bees, if they weigh 15 pounds, then you've got 45,000 bees.
Yeah.
I think you could probably do that pretty easily with a swarm. I've never done it. But I could imagine catching a swarm in a box, putting the box on a scale, seeing how much it weighs, and then dumping the bees into your final colony. But when I say a box, I mean like a cardboard box that
Yeah.
you could put on a scale.
It would be fairly accurate because when I was working at the bee store, when we were counting honey jar lids, we had this scale where we'd click a button, it was count, well, you'd zero it, and then you click that I'm going to count now, and then you put one jar in there, one jar lid, and then you do maybe 10.
Right.
And then and then you'd click there. I put 10 in there now, so it recognized that there's 10 grams of lids,
Right.
and each is 1 gram.
Right.
So
Right.
then once that is recognized, then I could dump the whole
Yes.
bag in there,
count them
and
by
then
weighing
it
them.
would go up very accurately.
Mhm.
So you could probably do that with bees and get a
Yeah.
very good number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of work to do it because you
Yeah.
look at this one colony of bees that the bees are hanging out in one of our pictures here. There are bees hanging out the front of the hive. They're way too crowded. But to imagine trying to shake all those bees into a box
Yeah.
and then
It-
weigh the box,
Yeah.
that's going to be difficult. A lot of bees will still be in the field, so you'd have to time it so that you're collecting all the bees. And some bees at some times of the year might weigh twice as much as they do at another time of the year because of the nectar that they're bringing in. So it would be a really tough one to get a really good count.
Right. I mean, you could technically, like, let's say if you want to go super scientific, right, get your original weight of your equipment. Then, in the end, when the beehive has established itself, weigh the entire thing, subtract your equipment weight, and then also kind of give or take the weight of the honey that they've collected, and then that will give you a rough idea.
A rough idea.
Without
Which should be
being,
somewhere between 40,000 and 70,000.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Without it being as invasive
Yeah.
as individual bee.
Yeah.
weight.
I
But-
don't think we should be hard on anybody that says they've got 50 or 60,000
Yeah.
bees in their hive. It's quite possible. It's unlikely to be that much consistently. But there was an article in the paper 4 or 5 years ago about a swarm of 700,000 bees. And 2 people had unfortunately, very sadly, been killed by the bee stings.
Oh.
And the fire department came out and they had to they got beekeepers involved, and they removed this wild nest that had been building inside of a building.
Yeah.
And they said it was a single colony. They called it a swarm, but they also called it a colony.
Right.
In
And a
this,
package as
in
well.
this no, they didn't use that word in the newspaper articles,
Right.
but they did say 700,000. That's like more than 10 times a normal population. So I thought, okay, here's probably what happened is a reporter showed up on the place,
Yeah.
and he talked to one of the fire department guys.
Right.
And the fire department guy was a beekeeper, and which they often are.
Yeah.
And so the reporter goes, well, how many bees were in here? And the fire department guy goes, oh, I would guess at least 70,000. So the guy wrote down 700,000.
Right.
That number, you can do a Google search on 700,000 bees in Arizona swarm or something like that. It got repeated by Reuters, Associated Press. It was in the New York Times newspaper. It was repeated on TV channels, like shows, over and over again, the same wrong number. And each time, somebody had to look at that little piece of news and say, okay, here's a story we're going to run with tonight. Let's really, like it's a human nature story. It's about some tragedy with these bees. It says 700,000. And nobody in the newsroom said, hey, wait a minute, that's impossible. They just ran with the story.
I'm trying to find it here. I found someone in Arizona said that they got stung 700 times.
That's a different story.
That's a different story.
Yeah, that would be pretty bad. That could be fatal. I think the limit for a person is about 1,000 stings.
700,000 bees.
Yeah,
This was Arizona.
I think it was. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, it was.
I'll take Arizona out. Get a broader search here.
Mm-hmm. We'll look it up, and we'll post
whatever.
a note with a link so people can find
Oh,
it.
okay, wait. 700,000 bees on a roof of a sweet nuisance. Okay, this is in Florida. Florida beekeepers this week began removing an estimated 700,000 honeybees from Lake Worth, Florida home,
Yeah.
though the homeowner didn't mind them as housemates. Huh.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely impossible. They got the number wrong, and nobody did any checking to see how many bees is a sensible number. It's really irritating. I know these people who work as reporters are not paid very well. They're really struggling to catch a story, and they're working hard. But somebody has got to do a little bit of fact checking once in a while.
Well, it says here that the beekeepers filled 4 buckets of honey weighing close to 65 pounds. It's not much honey from 700,000.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
I wouldn't even be surprised if it were 7,000.
Right.
But not 700,000. It's impossible for a swarm, a bunch of bees. Okay, final number that I have for today, the number 50,000.
Now you have a lot of. I'm gonna give a good guess here. Is this the amount of the peak number of beehives a beekeeper had at one point in his career?
Good guess. You're bang on with the number. There actually is a beekeeper or beekeeping family in the United States at this moment who I think have between 60 and 70,000 colonies of bees.
So this has been beaten.
Yeah, so this number I have up here has been beaten. It's 50,000, and the 50,000 was something, when you're a kid and you're trying to decide what you're going to do for a living, and you kind of get all enthused and say, oh man, I'm going to have a whole bunch of beehives. It's going to be fun. I'll be all over the world. I'm going to be taking care of bees. I'm going to be learning about bees. I'm going to be working with bees, making a lot of honey. Yeah. There was an outfit in central Mexico.
Whoa.
That was called Mell, M-I-E-L, that means honey, Mell Carlotta. So Mell Carlotta was established by 2 young men in their maybe early 30s who were on holidays in 1939, and the war broke out in Germany, and they were from Germany. So these 2 friends from Germany on holidays in Mexico, the war starts, and they said, you know what, let's just kind of stay here in Mexico and not go back.
Right.
And that was a brilliant choice. They had to find something to do for a living. One of them was a physician, but he, it's a new country, a new world, new language. So they got interested in bees. They could see that bees did really well in some parts of Mexico. And within about 10 years, they were running 50,000 colonies of bees.
That's wild.
I know. So, and when I heard that story as a little kid, I'm like, yeah, wow.
So we actually have an article here from the Bad Beekeeping blog. Mell Carlotta.
Mell Carlotta.
Once the world's biggest bee farm.
Yeah.
Wow. So one of the largest honey farms was a Mexican outfit started by a couple of guys on holidays from Germany, which you just said. And then, this is your article.
Yeah, I did write that. I don't know why you pulled that.
I don't know why. It was
here,
the first one that popped up.
It's probably going to be the only one, too.
But there's a thing in the Wikipedia. So they operated at least 50,000 hives of honeybees from 1920 to 1960. Today,
1920.
Yeah.
So it was the First World War then.
I guess so. This is a little Wikipedia expert.
Okay. I always thought it was from the 40s.
Yeah. Well, they went to 1960.
Yes.
So today, Adden Honey Farm in South Dakota, USA.
80s.
Yeah. 80. They have 80,000 colonies.
Mm.
Wow. So these are the biggest ones. So he was the first commercial major beekeeper was Petro Poroshenko.
Yeah, we talked about him with our Tolstoy story.
Right.
He was the one with 10,000 colonies of bees or something.
6,600.
Mm-hmm.
And then Moses Quinby was the first commercial beekeeper in the USA with 1,200. And then Jim Powers of Idaho had 30,000 honey-producing hives. And then Mell Carlotta.
Yeah, so I obviously never met Moses Quinby because he lived a century before I did. And he was noted for inventing the modern bee smoker.
Right.
So that was his thing. But Jim Powers, I did meet. He was such an interesting character. He always wore a little bow tie. So, beekeepers would be there mostly in khakis in those days. We didn't wear jeans as much as khaki material clothing. And we'd be at a beekeepers meeting. There'd be this one gentleman in a suit jacket with a little bow tie who had 30,000 colonies of bees. And he ran them. They started out in Idaho. That's where the family started.
Big Island Bees?
I don't know that. I don't know that company, Big Island. But he started in the country. They want to be a country. The state of Idaho, and that's where Power's honey farm was. His father had a couple thousand colonies of bees, and then Jim, after his military service in World War II, Jim took over the business and built it up to this 30,000 colony, which was a major logistic endeavor to try to keep track of all of that.
Right. Well, I'm having trouble managing 8.
Well, you got to grow with it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He had the advantage of growing up with bees on the farm where he lived, and some of us have that advantage, and it really is worth a lot. But others have the advantage of not growing up in a beekeeper farm. So you actually get to see things fresh and new and come up with really creative ideas and questions, like, why do you guys do it that way? And when you grow up in a beekeeping family or a beekeeping farm, you don't question it as much. Your mind isn't quite as open. You might have the skills developed, you might have the sensibility, the feeling of being around the bees, but you're missing something very innovative.
Yeah, in a way. Well, I see what you mean. Like it's almost like you're born into it, and you're like, this is a job that I was born into, part of my family thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas as if you discover it on your own, there might be some sort of
super spark,
some sort of passion that. There's
one other thing I heard about. I heard this story, and I know that it's true because of who told it to me. But they were visiting a semi-large size beekeeper. This has been back maybe around 1980, so it's quite a while ago. They're visiting them in Georgia. So they just came in with a truckload of honey.
Yeah.
And they parked the truck.
Atlanta, Georgia?
Yeah, that Georgia.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah,
okay.
not the country, but
okay. I had to I was like unsure.
Yeah, no, it's the state of Georgia.
Okay.
And this truck pulls in with honey on the back.
Yeah.
And guys jump on the back of the truck, and they start lifting the boxes up, overhead into a little trap door on the side of the barn.
Yeah.
And they do that for the whole load because the extractors are upstairs, and then you extract and use gravity to fill the barrels and big settling tanks that are down below.
Kind of like a grain silo or whatever.
So the visitor, and I tell you this, I'm told that this is true. The visitor goes, why are you guys doing it like that? Why don't you get a forklift, or why don't you have a conveyor belt or something? And they looked at the guy like he was totally stupid, and he said, this is the way Grandpa always did it.
Yeah.
And it was. This is the way Grandpa always did it. So we do get stuck with that sometimes.
Yeah. The status quo.
Yeah.
People like it.
Yeah.
Well, change is
So I have hope for you. I think you're going through a lot of things. You've made a lot of mistakes that you freely admit. I really admire that about you, that you have told our audience a lot of things that other beekeepers would have said, maybe I won't talk about that. But you do, and it's good because it helps everybody. Yeah. Everybody can see, okay, we're not going to do this because I remember what happened to Bidzina. He had trouble with robbing, or he had trouble, with the combs flying out of the back of the truck on the trailer. It's just so good and so refreshing. I tried to do that in my book, the Bad Beekeeping book, because I made so many mistakes, and I also had the same sense that there are a lot of good beekeeping books out there, and I thought, let's tell the story the way it is, and people might learn something from it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't even know about the beekeeping community in Calgary or in general, to be honest with you. So I came in from a completely outside perspective, and when I started beekeeping, I was for a little bit just doing it on my own. I wasn't really taking part in the club stuff because I didn't really think of it like I just but now you are. Now you're deep in, you're helping with everything.
We're not going to talk about it today because we're just about ready to wrap. But on Friday, you and I went out and we went to what's called the Millerville Farmers Market.
Right.
Or fair, the Millerville annual fair.
Yeah.
And what did we do?
Well, we judged honey. You judged honey, and then I judged you how to judge honey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I get the red ribbon for my judging?
I think it was pretty good. This is a very tedious process. Like they were arguing about the line being 1 centimeter off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck is going on? They're like, no, it's just above the line. We have to.
Yeah, we're talking millimeters, not centimeters.
Yeah, sorry, millimeters. Exactly. And then Ron was he was turning the jar up and down, looking at the viscosity. He's like, nope, this one is bad because it's all about the bubbles.
Yeah, air bubbles in our honey. That's common. We're going to do a story. We've got somebody who is a really good, accurate, and very efficient judge, and Linda, will be visiting with us in about a month or two, and she's going to tell us how she set up a judging competition, and I'm looking forward to that one a lot. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But I think we've covered a lot of numbers, and that was a really fun way to look at a wide variety of subjects.
I can't believe you missed the number 6.
Number 6 in the bee world, the 6 sides of the cell?
Yeah.
You're right. I should have. Why don't we do a whole episode just on the number 6?
Let's
the
do
hexagon.
it. Because as a kid, I was afraid of that number.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I always avoided it. And now it's a part of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's a big part of what you do.
Yeah,
working
exactly.
with
So
the number 6.
I can't get away with. Yeah, I found out it's the carbon lattice or the shape, the hexagon it's one of the strongest, most efficient shapes in the universe.
Okay.
So you can it's structurally intact, but it also has the maximum amount of space it takes, so you can fit as much storage as you can without compromising integrity or accomplish construction project Yeah, so it's the perfect shape.
Well, you certainly got me on that one. We should have talked about the number 6. But
yeah, we could even talk about where the 666 comes from if you like.
I would rather not.
Okay.
But I've enjoyed going through all these numbers with you. It's been good. It's been a really good. We appreciate everybody who listened to the end of this one today. We enjoyed doing our little bit of research and chatting back and forth on it. And we hope that you'll continue to listen, love, follow, subscribe.
Oh, and turn on your notification bells.
Oh.
Never miss an episode.
Yeah, don't want to miss any of these episodes. They're just so good.
You don't. You don't. Even one of these days, we're going to be doing a crazy honey giveaway. So.
Oh, I didn't know about that. It'd have to be your honey. I'm kind of sliding out of it. Anyway, it's been great. Do you want to take us home?
Yes. Join us every Monday, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time for a fresh conversation about bees and culture and curiosity.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.